That's it.
Welcome back to another episode of Important Miscellaneous Talks. I'm your host, Glass Crossfield, and today this has been a long-awaited, unprecedented interview. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Jolly Olive, or my real name is Jack Oliver, but I go by Jolly Olive on the internet. I'm happy to be here. Like you said, a long time coming, like a few years in the making. Huge deal.
God bless you. So, a little bit of a backstory for those of you who don't know. I want to say I was one of your first 100, 200 subscribers on your YouTube.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can flex on them. You were there early.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I definitely, how some people say getting out the mud. I was there. I was in the trenches with Jack.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I was heavy in the
Oh
trenches.
yeah.
And back then he was far easier to reach. So we talked a lot on Twitter. And then from then on, I think shortly after that, the pandemic hit, or within a few months of that. And I tried to get him on a podcast in person, but because of the pandemic, we couldn't get things going. And I said, hey, man, when you get to 100,000 subscribers, you owe me an interview. And
That's
every now
right.
and then I kept sending, hey, man, glad things are going well for you, but remember that deal at 100,000 subscribers when you
That's
get
right.
there.
That's right.
Remember, we got this interview, and he kept liking it. He said, no doubt. And he's a man of his word. He got to 100,000, and we are here today. So my very first question for you, Mr. Oliver, is how did you
Ooh.
get your name, Jolly Olive?
Oh, great first question. So I had my first video made in August of, I want to say 2020, I think. And I was just kind of sitting on it. I wasn't sure what to do with it. I'd been trying to do sports writing for a little bit, and I decided to go the video route so you could really own your product and stuff like that. And I had this video done and it was uploaded, and I just needed like something to go by, and I didn't want to use my first name because I don't know. That's you never really
Mhm.
subscribe to YouTubers that are just like some person's name. There's usually like a brand attached to it. Um, so I was going through the motions. I was trying to think of like clever baseball things, and then I thought, well, you know what? I want it to be more about like myself rather than just like baseball. So in middle school, my nickname was Jolly Olive by some people because I was Jack Oliver, and I guess I was considered to be a happy kid. So some people called me Jolly Olive. I was Olive for a little bit. I was Jolliver, Jolly, and then it just got combined together. And I thought, oh, that's cool. Like in my favorite color is green, so I think that goes with that aesthetic. Like I can kind of make that work. And if it doesn't make any sense to people, I could just change it. I only have like 50 subscribers or something like that. But then a few videos later, things started to take off, and then at that point, I was like, "All right, I guess this is it." And it's kind of just stuck ever since. And here we are, 100K later. There's no going back now.
God bless you, man. And the thing I really like about your content is you take the more overlooked route. You take
Sure.
some of the players, the teams, the moments that are overlooked, and excuse me, you like to emphasize those sort of things, which I definitely appreciate because as a content creator, that's something that I like to avoid as well because anything that's trending in the sports world is going to be a million videos on them immediately.
Right. Right.
So I definitely appreciate that you try to think outside the box with that.
Yeah, man, it's a fun way to keep it fresh, and also like it's exactly like you said, like it's a saturated kind of field. So if
Mhm.
there's a hot button topic, like people are going to tackle it, and like power to them. That's what they should be doing. But I think it's fun to highlight stuff that a lot of people haven't talked about, maybe could learn about too.
Got you. So explain how you became a Mets fan.
I've been a Mets fan since Citi Field opened. Well, I guess I was really born a Mets fan. I went to Mets games when I was a kid. But in '09, that was my first year watching like every game, checking box scores, learning the players, all that shit. And that's really when they hit the mud and they were bad for like 5 years in a row. So I think that built some character. But the reason I was a Mets fan is because my dad is a Mets and Jets fan. He got into sports in 1969, and that was the year that the Mets and the
Hmm.
Jets won the World Series and the Super Bowl in the same year. So he went front runner mode and said, "Okay, these are my teams because they're just going to win every
Little
year,
did he
right?"
know what he
Little did
signed up
he
for.
know he picked two horrible teams. So I told him, "Okay, I'll be a Mets fan. I can't do the Jets though." So I went with my Giants because a lot of my friends are Giants fans. So luckily, I have at least well, Giants are kind of bad too, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's how I got stuck with the Mets from birth.
Stuck with the Mets.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
It, I got an interesting question. Would you even allow I don't know if you have any kids.
No, no, I have no kids.
Do you want kids one day?
Yeah, I think one day eventually. 24 right now, so I got time, but chilling.
Do you think you would even allow them to be Yankees fans, Braves fans,
Mm.
Philly fans? Because I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not welcomed. It's
I've
not
thought about that
welcomed.
because I know that there are families out there that are like the kids are like Cowboys fans and the parents are Giants fans. Like I know that those families exist. I don't know because like if I am bonding with my kid over the sport and I'm trying to get him into the sport, then like I'm probably gonna like not force the Mets upon him, but like if we're going to a game, we're gonna go to a Met game. If he wants to be a Yankees fan, fine. We're from New York, whatever. I get it. Braves and like Phillies, that's kind of where I draw the line. If you're gonna directly root for the rival of your parents' favorite team, that's fucked up. You can't do that. You can't. That doesn't sit right with me.
Some kids are petty, and because I know a kid that said I became a Pacers fan because my father hated the Pacers so much.
See, that's just crazy. That's just crazy to me. You can't do that. I wouldn't allow that. You're under my roof. It's ridiculous. You're under my
No,
roof.
I'm so serious. Like I don't see the Yankees had the Braves, any other team, just one
No.
team in the NL East and not
Yeah.
the Yankees.
Oh
Any other
yeah.
team, any other
You
team.
could be a
Good.
Pirates fan. You could be a Dodgers fan. I don't care.
Yeah,
Don't be a Mets rivals fan.
I 100% agree. So you explained how you became a Mets fan, but why did you stay a Mets fan?
Mm.
Because it's not for the faint of heart.
Oh no, no way. Yeah, that's something I think about a lot because my first six seasons, all of them were losing seasons, and I was checking out a little bit when I was getting, I was in the later years of high school, going into college. I was kind of checking out, and then they made the World Series in 15, and that was really cool to be a part of. I got to go to playoff games for the first time. I got to
Yeah,
watch a good team for the first time.
yeah.
That kind of rehooked me, and I think that's the reason I'm still a fan is because after enduring like years of just mediocre, sloppy baseball, seeing them win was like so cathartic. It was such a unique feeling that I hadn't experienced before. And it showed me like what fandom can be, like what how fandom can make you feel. It's not just like, disappointment year in and year out. Because I had seen New York teams win, but I didn't have that same attachment to them like I did the Mets. So to see them win in the way they did, um, just kind of like reinvigorated my fandom and made me an even bigger fan than I was before. And at that point, I've been a fan of them for half my life essentially. There's no point in quitting that. So you're loyal to a fault at that point. And, I pride myself on my loyalty, and then thankfully I've been able to carve out something of a career because of that fandom. So I am thankful for it at the end of the day.
Yeah, my first couple I think I became a Mets fan in 2005. I'm gonna tell
Okay.
you, I became a Mets fan in 2005, and I think it was like towards the end of the season I became a Mets fan. So my first real years of watching the Mets consistently was '06, '07, and '08.
Okay. So good
So
years. Well, one of them was.
right, but you can imagine for the average 10-year-old the kind of turmoil that would send you through.
Oh yeah.
My
I
goodness.
mean, '06 was as easy as a season gets in terms of like viewing. They were just like in first in May and then they just rode it
Yeah.
out the rest of the season.
Yeah. '06 was good, but then I still haven't forgive Aaron Howman to this day.
Oh yeah.
And then the next day, actually, it was raining hard.
Yeah.
New York. It was raining very hard. And I wore my Mets hat. I wore my Mets hat. I cried on the bus to school.
Oh, I'm almost glad that I was like, I don't want to say too young to remember it because I do remember it, but
Mm.
too young to be that attached to the team at that point. Because
Yeah.
watching replays of that and hearing like that '06 ending and the 2007 collapse is really what like kind of killed my dad's fandom. Like he hasn't been the same fan since then. He goes to the games, he watches the team, but he's not the diehard that he was. So I think if I went through that like early, I don't think I would have stayed a fan. I wouldn't have been able to.
In 2007, I remember Fox they ran the commercials for like the playoffs. The Mets were in the commercials. We were in the commercials. Fox
Because
5.
they were supposed to be there.
But it,
Oh,
it's
I gotta
almost
find that.
impossible.
I bet you I could find that actually.
It's almost impossible to lose the division up 7 games with 17 left to play. You have to be actively trying to.
Dude, I found it immediately in the first frames is Jose Reyes. That's insane.
My,
That's insane.
I still have an email called Jose Reyes 113.
Hell yeah.
Is
Dude, Jose Reyes was my guy growing up. He was a
my this
beast.
is my favorite player.
I can't believe he's the Mets are the first team that's shown in the commercial. That's hysterical. That's so funny.
Insane. I was so relaxed as a fan, and I was so confident because as a kid, you're so
Yeah.
into it. You have no doubt that your team is gonna win. You have no doubt
Yeah.
that your team is gonna win. I was so into it, and then that happened, and then '08 when we lost in the last game of the season, I still don't forgive Tom Glavine
No.
that.
Yeah.
And those years is why I hate the Nationals and Marlins because they were so bad and games we needed to win down the stretch, they would just not lay over and die.
Oh yeah, you just want them to roll over, but like I get it from their perspective. Like they're professionals trying to get paid and get good stats. They want to put
Oh,
together good performances. But as a fan, it's like, dude, just roll over,
the Nationals were
please.
so bad too. Oh
There's
my,
a greater good. Just roll over.
I digress. Next up, can you name me three random Mets?
Yeah, I can name you 20 random Mets. How gross do we want to get? Do we want to play it safe
I
or?
want I want a high rarity score.
Okay. Well, I'll start with Last Things Millich. That is like what from what I've seen on Twitter, that's the go-to. Remember this guy, got in trouble for high-fiving fans. Can you imagine that now? Like a player going out there and high-fiving fans and people being like, "Oh, this player's not professional. He's not taking the game seriously." That's crazy to me. Everyone thought he was gonna be really good and he wasn't, and that's a bummer
Oh,
because I thought he was a lot of fun when he first came up.
oh, last thing's Millage.
Let's see. Let's get crazier. I thought well, Pedro Feliciano he was pretty good, but I don't think he's that random. Let's do like who's like a bullpen guy? Well, Dylan G. He wasn't a bullpen guy, he was a starter. I thought he was gonna be really good. He had a really good debut. Uh had like one good year during one of the bad years where I know all the players, all the teams, and I thought he was gonna be the truth. And then all the young guys came up and they started throwing 98-mile-per-hour heaters, and I was like, oh, those guys are good. Dylan G's not that good. Um, so he sticks out in my mind. Who else sticks out in my mind? I gotta look at that 2009 team. Hang on. That was my first team. Let me pull it up really quick because there's one name I'm thinking of. Uh Ryan Church. I hated. I never liked Ryan Church. I
I
don't know
liked
why. I didn't fuck with Ryan Church.
I liked Ryan Church.
I
I
wasn't a fan.
got a strong.
He
He always was hurt.
he was the guy that flew out to end 2008 and he got to the warning track and then it didn't go out. And I held that against him because it would have been a game tying homer. Oh, I got a good one. All right, this is my favorite random Met, who I think never gets talked about, and that's a crime. Um,
Hmm?
Guy named Hisanori Takahashi. In
Okay.
2010, he pitched for the Mets. He pitched in the Subway Series, a game that I went to. It was one of my first games that I like really remember. Um, and he like beat the Yankees when they were really good. He threw 6 shutout innings. Struck out 5 guys. I'm looking at the game log right now. Actually, they lost that game, believe it or not. But he was solid that year, and I remember thinking he was going to be awesome. And he was like the first Japanese player I got to root for, and then he just like wasn't really anything after that. So Hisanori Takahashi, that's my answer.
You might be too young for this, but can we
Yeah.
get Mike D. Felice?
Oh, you know what? I think you just stumped me. Mike D.
Mike D. Felice.
Oh, I've literally never seen this page before. Who is this guy?
Oh,
Who is this guy? Dude, he stunk. No offense to your guy,
was
but he
like
kind of
a he was
stunk.
like a third string catcher. I think he was. I think he
He
got
was a catcher.
he was backup for a little while. I forgot who got hurt. I think that might have
This
been.
is a good poll. I didn't know you were like this. I thought we were gonna do some baby stuff. This is a played for 13 years, bro.
I did not know that.
.5 WAR, not just kind of nothing.
He might have. I think Brian Schneider might have been the catcher then.
Brian Schneider, I remember. I didn't like him because he played for the Phillies and the Nats.
Yeah,
So he felt
he stuck for us. That's why
he
I didn't
didn't.
like him.
Yeah, he didn't feel like our guy. I didn't fuck with that, especially because
Or Buck
I knew
Buck might have
Piazza
been
was
the
great.
catcher.
I also really like Luduka, so like seeing him get reps was tough.
I like him too. I
Yeah,
got another one.
yeah.
Ruben Gotay.
I remember Ruben Gotay. He had like a walk-off hit against like the
Yeah,
Cubs once, I think.
Ruben Gotay. I think he also played for the Braves.
Yes, he did. Oh, true. After that. Oh, he had some nice numbers with the Mets. Not bad, Ruben Gotay.
And
That's a good random move.
last but not least, Nick Evans.
Nick Evans, dude. You know what? I think he could have hung on a little bit longer, but he had to play at City Field when they had the walls back, like all the way back. Like so you had to hit the ball like 450 feet to go over.
Yo,
Like he had pop, like he could swing a little bit, but he just could never hit home runs at City Field. Felt bad for
David
him.
Wright hit 8, I think, the first year, and he moved
Yeah,
to
like
Boston twice.
our homer, I think David Wright had like 10 home runs that like led the team. It's
Jose,
crazy.
Jose Reyes, he hit a bunch of triples in there. He hit a bunch of triples. You run all day in there.
Bro, this is insane. The '09 Mets had their home run leader was Daniel Murphy, he hit 12. Second place was four guys that hit 10. No one else had double digits. That is insane.
Oh my God.
That's no pop. Thank God for Pete Alonso.
Peter Alonso,
Pete
formerly known as.
formerly.
So why did you start creating baseball content?
It's a good question. You mentioned before that you started following me in the pandemic, so that's where this whole thing started. I was in college. I was an English major. I was going to be an English teacher. Something I think I might do that later in my life, but obviously this is kind of taking me on a different path, and I'm very thankful for it. But I was like fully ready and set to be a teacher. The pandemic happened, and you know, teaching during the pandemic was a very odd time, like student teaching and like going to grad school. So I put that on the back burner. I took basically a gap year and I was home. I was writing a lot because I still like doing creative writing, like playwriting and stuff like that. But there was no outlet to really put it on besides like a blog or something. And
Mhm.
I felt I hated the feeling of not being productive. It's still something that I don't like. I always like to be doing something. Um, so I was kind of idle during the pandemic. I needed something to do. So I started sports writing, just doing like loose articles about stuff that interested me. And I got a couple published at a website that I won't say because I don't want to,
Mhm.
bump elbows or anything, but this website did publish my work without crediting me. And I reached out to the person. There was no response or anything, and I really didn't like the feeling that that gave me of like, oh, someone took my work, published it, didn't credit me, and I had no control over it. So I was like, all right, from then on, I'm not going to write for anybody else. I'm going to write for me, and I'm going to produce it by myself, and whatever happens to it, happens to it. And that's why I started making videos because I was like, YouTube is a really like popular outlet right now. I watch YouTube a ton, so I can take a lot of tips and tricks from the people that I watch and try to apply it to my own craft. And I'm gonna do videos about the thing that I know best, which is baseball. So it started with a couple loose videos. I used to spam post them everywhere and be like, "Hey, this random Facebook group, check out this video that I made. If you don't hate me, please." And then eventually one just clicked. It was that first DeGrom video about the conversation he had with Terry Collins. And then after that, how his career changed. And that's how I kind of gained the Mets fandom with my channel. And then things just took off from there and life went in a completely different direction.
Was was that site Bleacher Report?
That's why it was not Bleacher Report. I would have been very happy to write for Bleacher Report. I have some cool friends over there. It was not Bleacher Report.
Okay, got you. Now,
Much smaller outlet because I had no resume whatsoever. It was just like, hey, can I write for you guys for free? And they said yes.
got you. Being an English major, do you really hanker down on grammar with your friends?
Oh, I'm not a grammar stickler, but I do write a lot, so I notice like just like basic mistakes and stuff like that, and they do bother me. But I'm never gonna be like, you're supposed to say whom instead of who there or something like that. It's not my game.
I correct people regularly.
Yeah.
But
What's the response to that usually? Is it shut up?
you get mixed reviews. I think a lot of my friends are pretty used to it, but
Yeah.
sometimes, especially I've noticed women, they're like, "Oh, I'm not in math class, or I'm not in
Mhm.
English class right now." But I'm like, "You're using the wrong your, and
Well,
you're an
now they
adult.
know. Now they know.
You're a big boy now. You should know that there's an apostrophe in you are."
I mean,
Uh,
we're getting rid of all the URs apparently. It's just gonna be UR now. Figure it out.
no, yeah, yeah. When you were texting anyway,
Oh yeah.
my goodness, and the wrong two also pissed me off as
Oh,
well.
the wrong two does make me mad. In fact, I one of my coworkers published his podcast the other day. They had the wrong form of two in it, and I was like, dude, like I know it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but this bothers me, and I hope it bothers you. And he fixed it. It made me happy.
I hope it bothers you. What would you say are some of the goals that you have with the direction of your content?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot lately too, because a big goal of mine was to get uh, that plaque right there, that 100K plaque. That was like kind of the thing I was chasing for a while. I was like, I want to get to 100K, I want to get the plaque, and now I have it. So it's kind of like, oh shit, like now I did the thing that I wanted to do.
Mhm.
So I think that's a problem a lot of people face is like when you don't have a set goal in front of you, it's kind of hard to like find motivation sometimes because it's just like week in and week out, it kind of becomes a job. Um, but I
Mhm.
think a big thing I want to try doing this year is, branching out of my comfort zone more. And John Boy Media gives me a great outlet to try and do those things. Recently we got to go to Arizona and go to spring training, and a big fear of mine, not fear, I should say, because I've done it a decent bit at this point, but a big thing I used to struggle with that I think I'm better with now is just interacting with players. Because, when you watch them on TV, they seem larger than life. They're these pro athletes at the top of their class. And, when I go up to them and I'm a foot smaller than them and asking them silly trivia questions, you feel that inferiority complex. But I think what I've learned from that is like, they're happy to be doing content, be doing something that's not practicing baseball and playing baseball, and a lot of the guys we talked to were really nice and really interactive. So that's something I want to do more this year. Any opportunity I get, I want to try and involve the voice of the players as much as I can, and get their faces in front of cameras and show that like baseball players are human and they can be really fun too.
I think another thing I've been thinking about this too about doing public interviews with fans outside stadiums.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that for a while, especially the year when like two in 2022 when the Mets were actually winning games, and when the Subway Series came about,
Oh yeah, it was popping.
the Yankee Stadium, and to get some of those interesting responses, I think that would have been really cool. Had
Yeah,
a
it's never too late, and I mean that New York is one of the best places to do that kind of content.
Yeah, for sure. Who's somebody that name three people that you want to interview?
Ooh, want to interview? That's a good question. Um, We used to try and get a lot of Mets players on Shea Station. Well, I don't think we do that any as much anymore because people, from what I've heard, people don't really love interview podcasts as much, especially when they get used to like two co-hosts. But if I had an avenue to
Look at these numbers. Please subscribe and help me out. Love you.
do interviews, number one on my list has always been Gary Cohen. He's like basically the voice of my childhood. He's the voice of so many people's childhoods. And I think getting the chance to talk to him and just kind of ask him questions that I don't think he's been asked before would be a really cool experience. That would be, I think, the person I'd be most starstruck around in terms of baseball people. Just like the amount of times I've heard Gary Cohen's voice in my day-to-day life is staggering. So to be able to converse with him would be really cool. So I think he's probably number one on my list. Also, you could just throw the whole Mets booth in there. I think we're so blessed with how
Oh my.
composed and intelligent those guys are, from Ron to Keith and Gary. So any one of those, that might be my three, honestly. The Gary Keith Ron Booth. I don't know if that's something of a cop out, but I think they're great together because they're all so different. Like Keith is the comic relief guy, and like he's goofy, but he also knows his stuff, and his resume and all that. I think Ron Darling is like one of the best commentators in baseball, and that's why he gets these national gigs. And I think Gary Cohen should get him more. But honestly, I'm glad that the Mets have him and haven't let him go, and he's probably going to be talking into that microphone until the day he does.
Yeah, you post Gary Keith and Ron highlights, which
Oh yeah.
just lets you know how much you appreciate them. And I actually interviewed the head of media of SNY, and
Oh, that's cool.
I appreciate that. And he let me because I'm wondering how in the world is Gary Cohen is not on TBS like in the playoffs, but he was like Gary because he also does works for SNY, so he does a lot of the UConn games too.
Right.
So he does like the basketball when the Mets season's over, and he said like Gary works so hard. Like for the game at 7 p.m., he's up at like 6 working on his craft, getting prepared for the game that night. So he said Gary's schedule is pretty robust. So
Oh
that
yeah.
might be a reason why. But man, at least for one playoffs, Lord have mercy. And
Oh
I
no.
I didn't realize how much we were blessed to have the SNY booth. until I started listening to other booths and
Yeah.
realized the stark difference of wow. And their fan base probably thinks like they're the pinnacle, and we really have the best of the best every single.
Yeah, it's cool to see that there's like kind of a consensus agreement that like the Mets booth is one of the best booths, if not the best booth. I do think there are plenty of good commentators out there now, especially compared to like 10 years ago. But the fact that 10 years ago to now, we still have Gary and Keith and Ron, and they're still as good as they were, even despite getting up there in age, it really is a blessing. It makes the baseball viewing experience that much better.
Yeah, for real. And they're able to keep you entertained even when your team is losing.
Oh yeah, and I've watched a lot of losing games, and I've still tuned in just to listen to them.
Yeah, who's the field reporter too?
Steve Gelbs, he's the man. He's the one
And
I've gotten to talk to and interview and hang out with. He's a very cool guy.
and we had Kevin Burkhardt before him. We just
And now he's a national football commentator. Like that's
yeah,
crazy. They had him as a
yeah.
sideline guy for 8 years.
That's insane. We're freaking blessed beyond belief, bro. My goodness.
Crazy.
What would you say? What would you say is one of your favorite Mets moments? Give me
Mm,
top three, top
one of
five.
my favorite
Whatever.
Mets moments. That's a good question. Um, Brain instantly goes to 2015. Just like watching them clinch was really cool because I had never seen that before. All the playoff stuff. But that's a little too easy of an answer, so I'll go around that.
Mhm,
Uh, 2019 had some really cool stuff in it. I was at the National Series, so I got to see the Todd Frazier home run. I went the next day and I got to see the Luis Guillorme home run to tie the game. That was the first of his career. That team was just a lot of fun. Like they started, and I wanted to say this because the Mets this year got off to such a poor start. They started 0-5. They're in a better place now. 2019 Mets, they didn't make it the playoffs in the end, but they were an 86 win team. They started terribly, and like that team was so fun in August. So it's like you just got to remember that's a long season and like shit changes and like
mhm,
there's no way that like things can stay this bad forever. And I think that team is a good reminder of it, even if they didn't, finish the job in the end. So they had some really cool moments. Um,
mhm,
but I think my favorite and there's some recency bias there for sure. But 2022, the combined no hitter, getting to see Edwin Diaz finish off a moment in Mets history is really cool. That'll live forever. Because I just think he's such an important part of this team's image and like his story to me is amazing. The fact that he got traded here, he didn't sign here, and he really, really struggled that first year, and
mhm,
like New
mhm,
York did not embrace him. They booed him relentlessly. Like he had the toughest job in the world for him to come back and be not only great but the best closer in baseball that year and be the one that got to finish that no hitter in such a dominant way is a really really cool moment to me. So combined no hitters, take them however you will because I personally don't love them as a concept. I like when guys go the distance and do it themselves, but it was my team, so I was a little bit more attached to it, and the fact that that was the guy that finished it and I was there to see it was really really cool.
And to this day, I have a little bit of anxiety when Edwin Diaz points up to the sky for a fly ball.
Oh, still that will never leave. No matter how dominant he gets. He did it the other night at the in the Reds
Yeah,
game. He pointed
yeah.
up and I was like, "Don't. I know you know it's in, but like I don't know it's in, so don't do it." And they know it's a fly ball. They don't you don't need to point up.
You
They
don't
know.
have to point. And sometimes I feel like the point is all that not accurate either. Because
Hansel Robles used to do it. Everyone used to do it. I don't know why.
oh my goodness.
Oh,
Oh my
God.
goodness. Like some of them were bombs too that he was pointing to. Some of them were bombs,
Like you
like
gotta know
wall
off the
scraper.
crack of the bat. You gotta know.
Yeah.
You gotta know. If there's a barrel, don't point. Just keep your head down. Shit happens.
Now your top five most heartbreaking moments as a Mets fan.
This will be a tough trip. Um, I mean, I'm not gonna go in any particular order. I'm just gonna rag them off as they come to me. I think Jason Bay's entire tenure as a Met is tough. Because he's a guy that I think is a really good person, and I thought the signing when it happened was good. It had me excited as a fan, and it just never worked. Between concussions and City Field being cavernous, there was no way that it was ever gonna work, and they cut bait and all that stuff. So that stunk. I think the way The Cespedes era ended was really upsetting because he electrified the whole city, and for him to just never be able to stay on the field past 2015 basically. I mean 2016 he played a lot, but those last 2 years he was just never ever on the field. It felt like the Mets could never climb out of the hole because they didn't have their best player. And I really it was cool to me when he came over and he helped lead us to the World Series, and then they signed him. Like they were like, we're gonna keep this guy. He's ours now. That was really cool to me as a fan because I hadn't seen that, and
Yeah.
they that same year they had let Murphy walk, and I was like, oh my God, the whole team's gonna leave now after they've gotten as far as they have in my entire life. So for his tenure to end that way, just it sucked to go through as a fan those 2 years. It really like hurt my fandom because he was just such a fun player to watch. So you can kind of say the same thing for Matt Harvey. I mean, that's a story that's been told to death. There are
No.
just so many Mets that were so terrific,
Yeah.
and then injuries just got in the way of
That
greatness, and there
rotation
was
too of Syndergaard, Matz, and Harvey
all of
as
them,
well. And
all
we
of them. Yep, all of them. I mean, Wheeler was going to be my next one, letting him walk, because now we get to watch him pitch against us like 3 times a year, and he's just been terrific. So it's I think the overarching thing is just like the kind of what ifs about it. Like the Mets had so much talent, and if they had one, kept the right guys, and two, kept those guys healthy, there really is no telling what they could have done in the 2010s. The 2010s NL East was a much weaker division than the NL East now. Like the NL East now, it's really hard to get on top of the Braves and Phillies, and even the Marlins made the playoffs last season. I'm not saying they're going to do it this year; they're off to a terrible start, but you not taking advantage of those years before the Braves became who they are now.
Mhm.
I think about that all the time because there were so many years where all it took was like 88 wins to win the division, and the Mets could have been doing that had they protected their talent and nurtured it.
Mm. Yeah, but some of those teams are Wilpon teams. Most of those teams.
I
All
mean, that's the other thing. It's cruel fate, dude. That our ownership didn't change sooner. But it
fun
is what it
fact.
is.
Fun
That's
fact.
fandom.
Bernie Madoff is from Laurelton, Queens, and that's actually where I live.
Yeah, you gotta move out of there. It's
Small world.
cursed.
Small world.
It's cursed.
If you could pick, if you could pick any three moments in Mets history to be at a live game, what would they be?
Ooh, the Johan Santana no hitters first. Um, I wasn't going to a lot of games back then. To be there, I think would have been really cool because that was the first one ever. It was by him, and that was his signature moment as a Met. So I think that's up there for me. I'm trying to think of some good answers. Um, 2016, the Asdrubal Cabrera walk-off homer. That was a really cool game. That was down the stretch that they were so injured and just fighting tooth and nail to win games. And the fact that they got that win was really cool. And the fact that that team made the playoffs is a really cool story that I think doesn't get talked about enough because they lost their first game. That was just kind of it. Um, but that home run's a very cool moment. And then I think there's one Harvey Strasburg game that's really cool. It was the crowd chanting Harvey's better, and it was that kind of as these two guys were rising through the ranks and becoming the faces of their teams and the aces of their staff. To be at City Field when it was that loud and that packed, when it hadn't been for the past 4 years or whatever it was, I think that would have been a really cool moment as like a younger fan. But there's so many you could list out of just like because you never know what you're gonna get when you go to a game. Like you could get a 9-0 blowout game and it's just nothing, or you could get like a lifelong memory. And that's just kind of why baseball is really cool.
No 86 Mets.
I
I
wasn't
know.
alive. That
I
wasn't even a thought.
I know. I know. I don't think you're not an 86 guy. You 86 86.
I can respect them and I know everything about them, but they're not my team.
Okay, I
They're not,
understand.
they don't belong to me.
I understand that. If you could have dinner with five people dead or alive, who would it be?
Mm. I guess I'll go beyond baseball here, but I'll include Gary Cohen because he should belong. Um,
I
so
think Gary.
I'll put him there. Uh, let's think. 5 people dead or alive. I can give you three probably. It's a loaded question. Let's think. Um, I think Aaron Sorkin would be cool. He's a movie writer, screenwriter. When I used to write plays a lot, he was someone I took a lot of inspiration from. He wrote The Social Network. He wrote Molly's Game, some of my favorite movies. So I think to hear him talk about his craft would be really cool. He also wrote The West Wing, which was one of my favorite TV shows, all that stuff. So I think hearing his wisdom over dinner would be really neat. And then David Wright. Why not David Wright? Because even if the conversation is simple and cheery, like David Wright is as a person, I think it would be cool to talk to, a childhood hero and hear about his experiences. Hope he's doing well. I feel like we don't see enough of him in
Yeah,
mainstream media.
I think I saw him on something Mets related. I think it was the Mets YouTube channel. It was the 30 for 30. They had a
Oh,
thing with Lindor and David Wright, and they were talking about the 30 and 30 seasons. Because
oh, right, yeah, he did it
they,
too.
yeah, they're
God,
both
he was good.
yeah.
God,
Yeah, unfortunately. And he would have went to the Hall so easily, man. I
so
would pick up
easily.
Jose though too. I don't think Jose's career goes the same way if he stays in New York, man.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I don't know. I mean, he won that batting title, and then I think the Marlins signed him, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Toronto.
Um, honestly, like hindsight being 2020, the Mets should have like traded Jose that year. They could have got a lot for him. The fact that they didn't is kind of crazy.
Yeah. I was a big Jose guy, man. Oh my goodness.
He was fun to watch.
My goodness. Um, dinner with five Mets, dead or alive.
Ah, okay, I see. So I shouldn't have used my Mets the other question.
I to be fair, I let you go and I could have mentioned it, so that's kind of a jerk move.
Yeah, that's all good. So I'll include David right there. R.A. Dickey is up there for me. I think his story is really interesting. The fact that he was born without a UCL, all the things he went through his upbringing, the fact that he failed so much as a big leaguer, and then the fact that he reached the pinnacle and won the most prestigious award using a knuckleball. I think it's one of the coolest stories in baseball history. And the fact that he did it as a Met is really awesome to me. So I definitely would add him to that list. Uh, I think hmm, Pete Alonso maybe. I just think it would be a fun dinner. I think he's a easy guy to root for, easy guy to talk to. He's a guy I'd like to meet eventually one day and hopefully do some content with because I think that getting his voice out there, his personality out there would be really cool. So I think he's on there. David Wright's on there. Let's think. Let's go outside the cookie cutter. Let's try and find someone good here. Uh, let's see.
Mike D. Felice.
Not Mike DeFelice. I don't think he cracks my list. I think I would this one might be weird, but I feel like talking about him. I would ask Ike Davis to go to dinner because I thought he was going to be very, very good. And then a mix of like injuries and the Valley Fever thing, and all of a sudden he was just gone. He's a first round pick, like he was kind of a big piece of the plan for the Mets. I think just any Met that kind of fulfills that role of like was supposed to be great, was great, and then things just kind of fell apart. Just to like hear about the perspective of what that is like from that side and like how you kind of deal with that and how you wrangle with that post career because he's not so much of a thought anymore, but that's that was his career. That's his legacy. I think to hear about his perspective on that would be very interesting to me.
Realistic expectations for this upcoming Mets season. Pretty sure we're gonna lose tonight, but yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're winning tonight. I mean, if you asked me before last night's game, I think I would have been a little less optimistic. So there's some recency bias here. Um, but I think it's a talented roster. The fact that they can win a big game like that when they get nothing out of their two-star players and they don't have their closer kind of tells you a lot. Like it tells you that there's a way for this team to produce runs and to get, scoreless innings and not have to rely on star power. And I think they'll be that much better when the stars get going. Um, but the thing is, it's a team built to sell. There's a lot of one-year deals, there's a lot of expiring contracts. If they are not in a playoff spot at the deadline, I do think they're going to sell because it takes them from a good position next year to a great position next year if they continue to load up the farm with talent and get all that money off the books. So it's a matter of how June and July go because that'll really determine whether or not the Mets are going to be in
Yeah.
that top six echelon and in one of those playoff spots. Um, but I firmly believe that it's in the realm of possibility. They need to get hot. They need to beat bad teams, which is what the team last year did not do. They didn't beat bad teams, and that's how you get fat on wins. And if they can do that this year, then I think Steve Cohen would not sell. I don't think he'd sell if the team was good. I think if they're 3 to 5 games over 500 and in a playoff spot, that is the type of owner that would not go back on his word and start selling players. It was just so bad last year that they had really no choice but to sell. And I think they have created a good safety net of we're going to build a talented roster. But if things go to shit again, that talented roster is going to be an asset to us and a way for us to infuse talent into the farm system. So it's really the best way to do this kind of year where you're kind of in between a lot of big contracts and waiting for free agents to come around. So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds, but I do firmly believe this is a team that could make the playoffs.
Jorge Lopez pitched horrendously yesterday. All those pitches were middle.
Box score looks good.
My goodness. Great catch by Taylor. Great catch by Marte.
Yeah,
God is good every now and then, you know.
every now and then the
Those
worm
spin
turns.
zones. This team I definitely agree with you, and I like Steve Cohen's mindset. It's really championship or nothing. If you don't finish first, you finish last. I think that's the kind of mentality he had, and that's why he sells so much last year because he figured we weren't going to be in a prime playoff position, so
Right.
might as well get a lot of those, a lot of those resources back. So I like the way that he thinks. And plus, this offseason there are some big names on the market.
Yeah. I mean, set yourself up for success in the future. If you're gonna hail 2025 as this big window, get young prospects who are major league ready and like help them add to the team. Because if you wanna beat teams like the Braves, you kind of have to become them. If you want to beat teams like the Dodgers, you have to be like them. You have to have a mix of young talent that you control and have on the books forever, and then spend the money to get the stars and supplement those guys. And if you can create a cohesive roster that way, you're going to be really hard to beat. And like not a lot of teams can do that, but a team in the New York market with an owner like Steve Cohen certainly can. They just have to be patient and pick their spot correctly.
And my final question for you is, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment thus far?
Hmm. I think the plaque was a big thing for me, even if it is like kind of an arbitrary thing. I think just the fact that I got there was cool. Because you see it in the background of a lot of videos, and you're like, you don't really think about it until you have it in your hands, and it's like, oh shit, like it was something I set out to do, and I actually did it. So I think symbolically, that's probably a big thing for me. But also just like in general, I think making something I'm passionate about my career. Um, it's something I'm proud of, but it's something I feel very lucky for as well, because like there's just not a lot of people that can say that they've done that. And I feel spoiled because I'm very passionate about education. I'm dating a teacher, like it's still very much a part of my life, something I want to do later on in my life. And I was fully prepared to do that. But the fact that I was able to tap into something that I used to consider a hobby and make it like my whole life is something I'm really proud of. And I think a lot of it was just hard work and, not accepting poor results and continuing to go back to the grindstone and get better at what I do. And I think that is the thing that I am most thankful for and most proud of.
I need that Dylan G video, man. I've
One
been
day,
I've been
one
in the
day.
comment section. I've been asking for it. I remember I recommended the 40/40 Club video too. I felt
That one was a hit. The Alfonso Soriano video, people
I
love that
felt
one.
really good about that.
I
And
take suggestions.
he's the only clean one on that list too. No
Oh yeah,
steroids. No steroids
oh
on
yeah.
that.
Dylan G had a couple nice years.
He was I
He
remember
was nice.
the reason why Dylan G sticks out to me so much because in my earth science class in 10th grade, that was 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And he's a Yankee fan. He would, obviously clown me.
No.
He'd clown me. And he'd be like, who's your opening day starter? Dylan G? So I remember, and
Oh,
I,
that's crazy because he was. That's
yeah, I remember you did like overlooked opening day starters,
yeah.
and Dylan G's the first one that comes to mind. During that time frame, you could get some interesting names for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's a ton of weird ones because sometimes, like, I mean, we had Tyler McGill one year. Sometimes you just need someone to take the pill. Like, it's not necessarily your ace. You just need someone to go.
Yeah, man. And Dylan wasn't that bad. Dylan wasn't that bad.
No, Dylan was a good pitcher. He was fine for what he was. You know,
Got you. That is all. I'll definitely make sure to put all your links and your all that good stuff in the
appreciate you, bro.
description. God bless you. I appreciate you being a man of your word. We gotta catch a Mets game one of these days. You gotta let me
I
know.
mean, I'll be at City Field more if the Mets are good. So keep your fingers crossed for some dubs.
Amen. Amen. God bless you.
Thank you for having me, bro.
No problem.